right, so let's talk about Jeremiah.
Okay.
And we're not talking about a song by Three Dog Night.
He was a friend of mine, though, Alex. I didn't understand everything after that first bottle, but I didn't care, right?
Yeah, he started sounding like a bullfrog. So why don't you give us a background? So who's Jeremiah? Who's he writing to? How does it fit into the big scheme?
Yeah, so they kind of all follow one another so easily, don't they? And I do a morning thing too at the Wellspring Facebook page. So if you go to the Wellspring Facebook page at 7:00, it's live.
There you go.
But we just started going through Daniel, and it's so cool because this is pointing right towards the Babylonians coming in.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar. So Jeremiah, he comes along, and it's been again the nation of Israel, years and years and years of. I heard somebody the other day say, "Do you know what the?" In fact, it was Charles Stanley, and he said, "Do you know what the biggest opponent of obedience is?" And his answer was partial obedience.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, man, that is good that's solidly it. When you think of Israel, whether we're talking about Isaiah or Jeremiah or even into Ezekiel, they were like kind of obeying, partially obeying. And so that's what makes it dangerous, because we feel like, hey, I did what you told me to do. Not really.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they go to temple. And so, but they also, the rest of the week, they're sacrificing their children to Molech.
And we think that we're checking off the boxes. And so Jeremiah is coming along and he's saying, you think that you're checking off these boxes, but you're really not. You've been prostituting yourself out. You might not think that you are, and this is the nation of Israel. They're out there fooling themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't believe it. They're kidding themselves, and they still don't believe it.
We're not doing sticks. We're only doing switchfoot. Just so you
know. Okay. He's what do they call him? The weeping prophet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because for one thing, he's bringing some very bad news to the people.
Yeah, because it's imminent now. At least with Isaiah, it's like, this is going to come later. But Jeremiah, it's like, in the middle of the book of Jeremiah, it comes.
Yeah, it's the Carole King song now. It's too late, baby. Now it's too late.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't really try to make it. They dropped the ball. I think it's interesting how it seems like Jeremiah is using that Charles Stanley quote you did about partial obedience. Jeremiah seems to be using pretty rough graphic visual imaging to shake them out of their self delusion that they're doing okay. And he uses this prostitute imagery. He says, you guys, you think you're okay, but you're under every spreading tree like a prostitute.
Yeah.
Basically selling yourself. That's what you are. And I'm sure they're just like, what? But it got to the point to where he had to use like images that were worse than what they thought they were. But in effect, they had multiple lovers. They had multiple gods. What I find interesting is how God speaks to Jeremiah through very common means.
Yeah.
Like I think of Ezekiel, and he's got these crazy things he sees, and Isaiah is seeing the Lord in the temple, but Jeremiah just sees more average things. And I'm going to read from the first chapter, which has a couple of them, and then maybe let's talk about how God speaks to different people differently. It doesn't have to be flashy.
Okay.
I'm in Jeremiah 1. I'm going to start at verse 11. So it says, the word of the Lord came to me. What do you see, Jeremiah? I see the branch of an almond tree, I replied. The Lord said to me, you have seen correctly, for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled. Let me just stop there for a minute. So I don't know, we don't know the context, but I almost envision Jeremiah sitting outside with the Lord, and he hears the Lord saying, what do you see? And he's just like, well, there's an almond tree here. So I see the branch of an almond tree. And God's like, yes, I'm watching also. And then he continues, word of the Lord came to me again. What do you see? I see that a pot is boiling. Maybe now he's looking in the window at his wife who's cooking something. It's tilting toward us from the north. The Lord said to me, from the north, disaster will be poured out on all who live in the land. I'm about to summon all the peoples of the northern kingdoms, declares the Lord. Their kings will come and set up their thrones, in the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem. They will come against her surrounding walls and against the towns of Judah. So it's a rough word.
Yeah, I was looking like, okay, what's the significance of almonds? Why there's only a few places it talks about almonds in Scripture, and one of them is where the nation of Israel's rebelling against Moses and Aaron, right?
Yeah.
And you have the sons of Korath and all those where the earth opens up and swallows some of them, and the people are freaking out, and we're not going to follow you anymore, Moses, because people are dying, and that's not okay. And so God says, get a staff from each of the leaders of the 12 tribes and separate them out and put them in the temple overnight or in the tent. And in the morning, he goes in, and Aaron's staff is sprouted, and it doesn't just have leaves on it, it has almonds on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an indication that this is my chosen one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking, well, why almonds? And I was reading a thing about almonds. They're one of the earliest blooming of the nut trees.
Okay.
So it's kind of indicating it's coming quickly. It's here rapidly. And so I don't know if there's something, because he doesn't go on to, the Lord doesn't say, okay, Jeremiah, so here's the significance of almonds.
Yeah. He just says, I'm watching. And,
yeah.
And so we're left to fill in the pieces, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that he wanted to see if Jeremiah was watching,
Right. Are you seeing what I'm wanting you to see?
Is it possible that God will speak to normal people through ordinary things, or is this more limited to crazy prophets?
I think at the beginning, Jeremiah is just a normal person. I mean, God.
He came along.